The human moved slowly through the massive corridors of the alien flagship. Every step was careful, measured, but each one carried the weight of old pain. His clothes were simple, plain, nothing compared to the shimmering robes and armor that covered the alien delegates around him. Yet, despite his worn-out appearance, he moved with quiet dignity, a calmness that drew the eyes of those who watched him. Most of them, he could feel, saw only weakness, bloodied flesh, scars, and a limp that refused to leave him. They did not understand what they were looking at. The human's name was Elias. He was an envoy, chosen not because he was strong, but because he could endure. His body carried the marks of humanity's suffering at the hands of the galaxy. Scars traced across his arms and chest, old burns that had not fully healed, bruises that refused to fade completely. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his robe, but his eyes were steady. They were deep brown, clear and sharp, holding a quiet fire that refused to be extinguished. As he entered the main hall, the room went silent. The hall was enormous, a circular chamber with walls that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Floating lights illuminated the space with a pale, cold glow. Delegates from dozens of species stood or hovered along the edges, some in groups, others alone. Every species had its own way of moving, its own way of standing. Some were tall and insect-like, with multiple limbs and chittering sounds that echoed across the hall. Others were sleek and smooth, their bodies glowing faintly, like stars captured in flesh. And then there were those that resembled humans so closely it was hard to remember that humans were once thought weak. Elias ignored them. He did not look to the left or the right. His attention was focused on the far end of the hall, where the throne rose above everything else. On it sat the alien queen. She was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Her skin was dark, almost metallic in the light, and her eyes were golden, glowing with an intelligence that felt older than the galaxy itself. Her hair, or what humans would call hair, was like strands of liquid light, moving slightly even when the air was still. Her presence was commanding, terrifying even, yet it did not strike fear into Elias. Not anymore. The queen's gaze fell on him the moment he stepped fully into the hall. She did not flinch, did not blink. It was as if she had already known him, had already seen the wounds on his body before he even entered. The delegates around the room shifted uneasily. Some whispered to each other, their voices barely audible. Others stared openly, their mouths hanging slightly open, but no one dared speak. Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving slowly toward the center of the hall. He could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him, and yet he held himself upright. The scars burned under his clothing, but he ignored the pain. Every step reminded him of the price humanity had paid, the suffering his people had endured, and the countless battles they had survived. He had grown used to it. Humans survived not because they were stronger than others, but because they could endure. The queen's voice cut through the silence, clear and sharp. "Who did this to you?" she asked. It was not a shout, not a demand. It was a simple question, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 judgments. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Elias did not hesitate. He met her gaze evenly, his voice calm, steady, and without accusation. "The galaxy did this," he said. "My people were tested, enslaved, and attacked because others believed we were weak. They believed patience and endurance were signs of submission. They were wrong." A ripple ran through the room. Some delegates whispered to each other. Some shifted uneasily in their places. The queen's eyes did not waver. She studied him, leaning slightly forward on her throne as if trying to measure his soul. For a moment, the silence returned, heavier than before. Then she spoke again, softer this time, almost curious. "You speak without fear. You speak without hatred. Why?" Elias closed his eyes briefly, remembering the countless times humanity had been betrayed, exploited, and used as pawns. Because anger alone does not win wars. Fear alone does not protect anyone. We survived by being patient, by learning, by enduring. Our wounds are proof, not weakness. Our suffering is proof, not submission. The queen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Elias thought she might laugh, or strike him. But neither happened. Instead, she studied him as one might study an ancient artifact, one with hidden power. Finally, she spoke in a voice that was calm but firm, commanding attention from the entire hall. "You are human." "I am," Elias said simply. The queen tilted her head slightly. "And yet, you are not broken." "I am as broken as my people," Elias said. "But broken does not mean defeated." The room went quiet again. Delegates from the other species looked at one another nervously. Many of them had believed humans to be weak. Many had thought humans would beg, cower, or flee in the face of greater power. And now they saw a single human standing tall, injured yet unwavering, and it unsettled them more than anything else could. The queen leaned back slightly, her expression thoughtful. "Show me," she said. "Show me the proof of your endurance." Elias nodded. He had been prepared for this. Slowly, he lifted his sleeve and revealed a long scar that ran along his arm, deep and jagged, a mark left by weapons designed to kill. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the memory of the pain that had created it. The delegates gasped softly, some involuntarily at the sight. "Every mark on me," Elias said, "tells a story. Every wound, every scar, every ache in my body is a lesson learned. The galaxy has tested humanity in countless ways, and yet we are still standing. We endure, and we survive." The queen's eyes gleamed with something that Elias could not read. It was admiration, yes, but also calculation. She had seen thousands of species in her long life, some powerful, some cunning, some cruel, yet she had rarely seen one that carried suffering with such quiet strength. The human was small, fragile in appearance, yet there was something in him that none of the others possessed, a resilience that could not be measured by weapons, by numbers, or by fear. She gestured for him to come closer. Every step he took echoed in the massive hall, and yet he felt no fear, only resolve. When he reached the center, she extended a hand, not to touch him, but as a gesture of acknowledgement. "Your wounds are not forgotten," she said. "And neither is your patience." Elias bowed his head slightly, accepting her words. "Thank you," he said, "but my people's suffering is not mine alone. I carry it because I must. And I speak because it must be heard." The queen's expression softened slightly. "Then you speak wisely," she said, "and the galaxy will answer for what has been done." The delegates stirred uneasily. Some looked at one another, uncertain what this declaration meant. Others tried to mask their surprise, but it was clear that the balance of power in the room had shifted. A single human, injured and underestimated, had captured the attention of the most powerful being in the galaxy. Elias straightened, feeling the weight of the moment. He had not come seeking recognition, or reward, or mercy. He had come to show the truth, and the truth was simple. Humanity had been wronged. Humanity had suffered, and humanity had survived. That alone was enough to unsettle those who had believed they were weak. The queen spoke again, her voice calm but carrying authority that demanded attention. "Your wounds will not go unnoticed. The galaxy has been blind to your endurance for too long." "I will see that it answers." Elias nodded, understanding the implication. Justice, or at least acknowledgement, was coming. Not because humans had demanded it, but because someone powerful had seen the truth. Someone capable of making the galaxy listen. He looked around the hall one last time, The delegates, once dismissive, now regarded him with a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. It was a new feeling for him, one he was not entirely comfortable with. But he did not shy away from it. Humanity had survived worse, and they would survive this too. As he turned to leave the center of the hall, the Queen's gaze followed him. He knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had not yet answered, not fully. But he also knew something else. For the first time in centuries, humanity had an ally among the stars, one whose power and wisdom could change everything. Elias moved toward the exit slowly, each step a reminder of the pain he carried, but also of the strength he had gained. He had survived the worst the galaxy could offer, and now he had the attention of its most powerful ruler. The human envoy was wounded, yes, but he was also unbroken, and the galaxy would soon learn that endurance, patience, and quiet strength could be far more dangerous than anger, fire, or weapons. The alien queen did not forget Elias or the wounds he carried. Long after he had left the hall, her mind remained fixed on the human envoy. She had seen countless species across countless star systems, but humans were different. Not because they were stronger, faster, or more dangerous in the conventional sense. No, humans were remarkable because of their resilience, their ability to endure suffering without letting it destroy them. She summoned her advisors and scribes, a group of beings who were as ancient as she was, whose knowledge stretched across millennia. "Find everything," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight that made even the oldest among them pause. "Show me the truth of this species." The advisors nodded, some exchanging glances. They had never seen the Queen so intent on a single subject before. Many of them had considered humans trivial, a minor species scattered across a few forgotten planets. Some had even argued that humans were beneath attention, too fragile to matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. But the Queen had seen what mattered. She had seen endurance, courage, and patience in a body scarred and broken by cruelty. Within hours, reports began to arrive. Entire systems had records of human colonies being attacked, plundered, and exploited. Some planets had been completely erased, their populations scattered or enslaved. Some humans had been experimented on by species that considered ethics optional. Others had been forced to work in mines on moons that were barely habitable, exposed to radiation and chemicals. The Queen's eyes narrowed as she read through the reports. Each document detailed horrors that would have shattered most civilizations. And yet, humans had survived. They had not only survived, they had adapted, learned, and found ways to fight back when possible. Small victories, almost invisible at first, had been won on many worlds. "Why have we not noticed this before?" asked one advisor, an insect-like being with 3 sets of eyes. "Because we measured them wrongly," the Queen said. "We measured strength by muscle, by weapons, by fleets. We did not measure patience, endurance, or the ability to survive without power. Humans are dangerous because we underestimate them." Another advisor, sleek and smooth with a translucent body that shimmered with every thought, spoke. "They are nothing compared to us. Their technology is crude, their fleets weak, their biology fragile. Surely they cannot pose a threat." The Queen looked at the beam sharply. "And yet," she said, "they survive when every other species would fall. That is proof of power. That is proof that the galaxy has misjudged them." She leaned back, thinking. She had observed Elias carefully, watched his interactions with other delegates, and studied his injuries. None of it was coincidental. Humans survived not because they were strong in the traditional sense, but because they were clever, adaptable, and patient. They endured pain and suffering without breaking. They did not need threats to control them. They learned from them. She decided to investigate further. Using her influence, she dispatched scouts and agents across the galaxy, requesting detailed reports on every human colony, every known human settlement, and every recorded interaction between humans and other species. Some were straightforward, Planets that had been attacked, cities burned, fleets destroyed. Others were subtle. Records of humans saving one another, adapting quickly, and striking back in unexpected ways. As the reports came in, the Queen's admiration grew. Humans were not just surviving. They were learning. They were building networks across systems, sharing knowledge secretly and efficiently. They had no single homeworld that defined them. They were everywhere, spreading like a quiet storm. Subtle, but unstoppable. She thought of Elias again, standing in the hall, revealing his wounds with calm dignity. Those wounds were not just injuries. They were a symbol. Each scar was a story, each bruise a lesson. The human had spoken the truth. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had survived. The Queen called Elias back to the flagship. She did not summon him with threats or power, but with an invitation, a gesture that carried both respect and curiosity. When he arrived, he found the hall quiet, empty except for the Queen herself. She did not rise from her throne, but gestured for him to approach. "You returned," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. But there was a steel underneath it that made Elias stand straighter. "I did," he said. "I came because my people's suffering cannot be ignored." "And I came because I want the galaxy to hear the truth, not just see the wounds."
The Queen studied him for a long moment.
"Tell me," she said finally, "how have your people survived what the galaxy has done to you?" Elias took a deep breath. "We survive because we have no choice. When the galaxy attacks, we do not have the luxury to surrender. We learn quickly, adapt quickly, and we find strength in each other. Our technology may be crude, but we make it work. Our weapons may be small, but we use them cleverly. Our bodies may be fragile, but we endure." The Queen nodded slowly, and yet, most species do not see this. They see only weakness and assume it is submission. "That is correct," Elias said. "They have underestimated us for centuries, and that is why we are still here." "That is why I am here." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "You speak of centuries? You have records of these attacks?" Elias nodded.
"We keep records of everything we can, not to boast, not to threaten, but to ensure that we are remembered."
Every colony destroyed, every person enslaved, every act of cruelty. We remember, and we learn from it. The Queen's eyes gleamed. "And you forgive?" Elias paused, considering the question. "Forgiveness is not weakness, but we do not forget. We do not forgive blindly. We remember, and we prepare. That is how we survive. That is how we endure." The Queen leaned back in her throne, thoughtful. "You are unlike any species I have seen. Most would crumble under half of what you have endured. And yet, you stand tall." "I do not stand alone," Elias said. "I carry the strength of my people with me. Every scar, every wound, every loss, it belongs to all of us. That is why I can endure what others cannot. That is why humanity can endure what others cannot." The Queen nodded slowly. She made a decision, one that would alter the fate of many species across the galaxy. "Then I will see that the galaxy answers," she said. "Not because you ask for it, but because justice cannot ignore what has been done."
"I will protect your people. I will ensure that the suffering you carry is recognized."
"And I will make certain that those who attacked you understand the cost of their arrogance." Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders, not because he believed the Queen would act immediately, but because someone powerful had seen the truth. Someone capable of influencing the galaxy had recognized humanity's endurance. That alone was a victory. The Queen rose from her throne, her movement slow but commanding. "I will not interfere with your people unnecessarily," she said. "But I will not allow them to be ignored or abused. Humans are remarkable. They survive when others fail. They endure when others break." That is power in its purest form.
Elias bowed slightly.
Thank you, Your Majesty, he said, for seeing what others could not. The queen nodded. It is not enough to see, she said. It is necessary to act, and soon the galaxy will learn that endurance is not weakness, and humans are not prey. As Elias left the hall, he felt a quiet hope. For the first time in centuries, he believed that the galaxy might finally recognize humanity's strength. Not strength in weapons or fleets, but strength in endurance, in courage, and in the ability to survive what others could not. Outside the hall, the corridors of the flagship stretched endlessly, cold and bright under pale lights. Yet, Elias no longer felt small or insignificant. He carried something far more valuable than weapons or fleets. Proof that humanity could endure, and that the galaxy would have to answer for its cruelty. And as the queen watched from her throne, she thought of the consequences. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. They had assumed weakness where there was strength. They had assumed submission where there was patience. And soon, the galaxy would learn the cost of that mistake. Because humans did not just survive. They endured. And endurance, as the queen knew, was far more dangerous than any weapon. The galaxy was not prepared for what came next. The alien queen had observed humans for years now, learning about their resilience, their patience, and their quiet endurance. She had seen what no one else had, a species that survived impossible suffering, not because of brute strength or advanced technology, but because of something far harder to destroy, unyielding spirit. Elias had returned to his people, carrying with him the queen's words, her recognition, and her promise. It was not a guarantee of safety, but it was the closest thing humanity had ever received. The human colonies, scattered across distant systems, had been abandoned, attacked, and underestimated for centuries. Many had come to accept that their survival was a lonely struggle against the galaxy's indifference. But now, there was a glimmer of hope, a spark that began to spread quietly across the stars. Elias began by gathering the leaders of humanity's fleets and colonies. His wounds were still visible, scars that had not yet fully healed. But he moved with purpose, commanding attention with nothing more than calm words and steady presence. Humans listened to him, not because of his authority alone, but because he embodied what they had endured. He had survived, and that survival had meaning. He explained the Queen's decision, that humanity was under her protection, that the galaxy had to answer for centuries of abuse, and that they would finally be recognized. There was caution in his voice. Humans had long learned that hope without preparation was dangerous, but there was also fire, the same fire that had carried humanity through wars, slavery, and exile. The leaders exchanged glances. Some were wary, thinking of the fleets they had lost, the colonies destroyed, the families taken. But they trusted Elias. They had survived worse, and if a single human could endure what Elias had endured, then humanity could endure this too. Preparations began immediately. Fleets that had once hidden in the shadows now moved openly, small, modular ships that were crude compared to the alien vessels, but effective in ways the galaxy had never predicted. Humans trained tirelessly, learning not to match their enemies in strength, but to exploit their weaknesses. They studied tactics that relied on clever maneuvering, improvisation, and unity. Each human ship, each fleet, each soldier carried a lesson learned from centuries of survival. The galaxy began to notice. Small skirmishes erupted along trade routes. Alien fleets that had once dominated human sectors suddenly found themselves facing attacks that were unpredictable, coordinated, and surprisingly effective. Humans did not rely on massive weapons or overwhelming force. They relied on creativity, endurance, and the knowledge that defeat was not an option. Elias traveled between systems, overseeing operations and offering guidance. His presence alone inspired humans. They saw in him a reflection of their own struggles, their own scars, and their own endurance. They fought not just for territory, or resources, but for recognition, for dignity, and for the truth that their suffering mattered. Meanwhile, the alien queen watched from afar. Her throne room, high above the central systems of her empire, was filled with data streams, holographic projections of battles, and reports from her scouts. Every human movement was catalogued, every engagement analyzed. She did not interfere directly, not yet, but her influence was present. Aliens who had previously dismissed humanity now hesitated, unsure how to respond. The first major confrontation came near the edge of a star system, where a notorious alien warlord had attacked a human colony years earlier. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, yet they did not falter. Elias led a fleet of small ships, striking at the warlord's supply lines, exploiting weak points that larger fleets would have ignored. The humans moved like a single organism, each action complementing the others, each maneuver designed to survive, adapt, and fight back. The warlord's forces were thrown into chaos. They expected humans to be weak, to cower or surrender. Instead, they found themselves trapped in unpredictable patterns, attacked from angles they could not anticipate. Their advanced weapons were wasted on ships that seemed to vanish and reappear, while the humans targeted critical systems with precision. Within hours, the warlord's fleet was crippled. Ships that had once been symbols of terror now drifted silently, disabled, as humans claimed the victory. The news spread across the galaxy. Humans were no longer invisible, no longer prey. Species that had once raided human colonies began to reconsider. Humans were dangerous, not because of technology alone, but because of their endurance, their cleverness, and their refusal to surrender. Elias returned to the Queen's flagship after the battle. He was exhausted, his wounds aching, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. The Queen studied him quietly.
"You have done well," she said. "But this is only the beginning."
"The galaxy still underestimates you. You must prepare for more than skirmishes."
You must prepare for a reckoning.
Elias nodded. "We are ready," he said. "We have survived worse."
We can endure anything, and we will not back down.
The Queen smiled faintly. "Endurance is a dangerous power," she said. "Most species cannot understand it. They will learn, though, in time. And when they do, they will remember the human who stood, scarred and wounded, and refused to bow." As humanity continued to expand its influence, they did so quietly at first, avoiding direct confrontation with the most powerful species. They rebuilt colonies, strengthened fleets, and trained new generations in tactics that combined patience with aggression. Every victory, no matter how small, was a lesson learned, and a step toward the eventual reckoning. Some species tried to strike back, hoping to crush humanity before it became too powerful. But each attempt failed. Humans did not rely on strength alone. They relied on strategy, endurance, and the understanding that every attack against them would teach them something new. By the time the galaxy realized the full extent of humanity's capabilities, it was too late to stop them. Elias watched over these operations, moving constantly from system to system, meeting leaders, inspiring troops, and learning alongside his people. He carried the weight of humanity's scars, but he also carried their pride, their ingenuity, and their unwavering spirit. Every battle, every maneuver, every plan was a testament to what humanity had endured and what they were capable of achieving. The alien queen continued to observe, offering subtle guidance and ensuring that humanity's endurance would be recognized. She did not intervene openly, allowing humans to prove themselves, to show the galaxy what patience, strategy, and quiet strength could achieve. As months turned into years, humanity's reputation grew. They were no longer the species that others could dismiss or exploit. They were the species that endured, survived, and adapted in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Their scars were proof of their resilience, their victories a warning to those who would underestimate them. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy still contained those who would challenge humanity, those who believed they could ignore or destroy them. But he also knew that humans were ready. They had survived centuries of oppression, endured suffering that would have crushed other species, and emerged stronger, smarter, and more determined. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. Humans were no longer the prey. They were a force that demanded respect, recognition, and justice. And with the alien queen watching over them, the galaxy would have no choice but to answer. Elias stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars. Each light was a world, a potential challenge, a potential ally. He felt the weight of his people on his shoulders, the scars of his body a reminder of what had been endured. But he also felt hope, pride, and determination. Humanity had survived, and humanity would endure. The first cracks in the galaxy's arrogance had appeared. Soon they would widen, and when they did, humanity would be ready. Not because they sought war, but because they had survived, learned, and grown stronger than anyone had imagined. The alien queen's words echoed in his mind. Endurance is a dangerous power. Humans were about to show the galaxy exactly what that meant. The galaxy had grown restless. Whispers of humanity's endurance spread like fire through the stars. Worlds that had once dismissed humans as insignificant now looked on in fear and uncertainty. Small skirmishes had become larger confrontations, and the humans, under Elias's leadership, were no longer hiding in shadows. Their fleets were visible, their colonies rebuilt, and their resolve clear. Every victory, every clever maneuver, every survival against impossible odds had built their reputation. Elias stood on the bridge of a human flagship, the central command vessel, and looked out at the stars. Each point of light represented a planet, a system, a possible enemy. And yet, none of it intimidated him. He had survived the galaxy's worst. He had survived the wounds on his body, the losses of his people, and the betrayal of those who had underestimated humanity. Now humanity was ready not for revenge, but for recognition. The alien queen observed from her throne aboard her flagship, distant, yet intimately connected to the events unfolding. Her presence was invisible, but felt across systems where human and alien forces met. She did not interfere openly. She wanted the galaxy to witness what endurance and intelligence could do, and she wanted humans to claim their place without relying entirely on her power. She trusted them. She knew that humans were dangerous not because they were violent, but because they could survive anything, and nothing in the galaxy could break them. The first true test came at the edge of a contested system, where several alien factions had formed an alliance to crush human influence. They believed their numbers, their technology, and their arrogance would be enough. They had underestimated humans before, and they would regret it. Elias led a fleet that was smaller than the combined forces of the alien alliance. Yet every ship was prepared, every commander alert, every crew member focused. Humans had learned to adapt, to exploit weaknesses that larger, more powerful fleets ignored. They struck with precision, moving in ways the aliens could not predict. While the enemy relied on overwhelming firepower, humans relied on creativity and unity. They used debris fields, gravity wells, and the smallest advantages to cripple larger ships. Each maneuver was calculated, each sacrifice meaningful, and every action reinforced humanity's reputation as a species that refused to surrender. The battle raged across the system. Alien forces pressed in from multiple directions, confident in their superiority. Yet the humans moved like one organism, every fleet and ship anticipating the other's actions. A crippled vessel was not lost. It became a trap, a lure to draw enemy ships into ambushes. Every attack was measured, every response calculated. The aliens were forced to retreat, then regroup, then fall again. Elias observed the battle from the bridge, his wounds aching from long months of travel and command. He did not falter. His presence inspired his people. Every decision he made reflected centuries of human endurance, patience, cleverness, and the willingness to endure suffering for the sake of long-term victory. By the time the battle ended, the alien alliance had lost more than half its fleet, their confidence shattered, their arrogance wounded, and their leaders humiliated. The humans had claimed victory not through raw power, but through endurance, strategy, and the refusal to be underestimated. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. Worlds that had once considered humans irrelevant began to reconsider. Humans were no longer the species that others could exploit with impunity. Their scars were now symbols of survival, their victories symbols of intelligence and perseverance. Elias returned to the flagship, where the alien queen awaited him. She did not rise to meet him, but her presence filled the room. She observed quietly as he approached, his posture still calm, his gaze steady.
You have done well, she said. Her voice was soft, but each word carried the weight of authority and judgment.
The galaxy is beginning to understand what I have seen. Humans endure, and endurance is dangerous. Elias bowed slightly.
We do not seek war, he said. We seek recognition and the right to survive without being attacked or underestimated.
That alone is enough to defend ourselves.
The queen studied him. Recognition comes at a cost, she said. Some will not accept it without consequences. Others will seek to test your endurance further. We are ready, Elias said simply. We have survived worse, and we will survive anything the galaxy throws at us. The queen nodded, her eyes glowing with faint light. Then let them come, she said. Let them test humans again. And when they do, they will learn that endurance is not weakness, and that patience can be more dangerous than any weapon. Over the following months, humanity consolidated its victories. Colonies once abandoned were rebuilt stronger and better protected. Fleets trained in unconventional tactics grew in skill and coordination. Every engagement with alien forces became an opportunity to demonstrate the power of endurance, intelligence, and unity. Humans were no longer invisible, no longer underestimated. They were respected, feared in some quarters, and admired in others. Elias moved tirelessly among the colonies and fleets, his wounds still visible, a reminder of the suffering his people had endured. He did not hide them, for the scars told the truth. They told the story of humanity's resilience, the battles they had survived, and the endurance that made them unique. His presence inspired others to endure as he had endured. The alien queen watched humanity's rise with careful attention. She had not interfered directly in every engagement, allowing humans to prove themselves, but she ensured that their endurance would be respected. Her influence, subtle but undeniable, made the galaxy take notice. Humans were no longer prey, they were survivors, strategists, and a force that could not be ignored. As the years passed, humanity's reputation solidified. Worlds that had once attacked human colonies now approached cautiously, offering alliances or trade rather than aggression. Species that had once dismissed humans as weak now studied their tactics, their endurance, and their ability to survive impossible odds. The scars humans carried became a symbol of their strength, not their defeat. Elias reflected on the journey humanity had taken, from scattered, oppressed colonies to a species that commanded respect across multiple systems. Humanity had endured everything the galaxy had thrown at them. They had survived cruelty, exploitation, and countless attacks, and they had emerged stronger. Not because of weapons or technology alone, but because of something deeper: their spirit, their endurance, and their refusal to surrender. The alien queen approached him in a private chamber aboard her flagship. Her presence was imposing, but there was respect in her gaze. "You have done what few species could," she said. "You have survived the galaxy's worst and claimed your place among the stars. You have proven that endurance is power, and that patience can be more dangerous than any weapon." "We survived because we had no choice," he said. "But we endured because we were determined to survive. Every scar, every wound, every loss taught us something. and now we are ready for the galaxy to recognize us.
The queen's eyes softened just slightly. And they will, she said.
Not because you demand it, but because the truth of your endurance cannot be ignored. You have earned it. Humanity will no longer be overlooked, dismissed, or attacked without consequence. Elias looked out at the stars from the chamber, thinking of all the planets, all the people, and all the battles that had led to this moment. He felt the weight of humanity's history on his shoulders, but he also felt pride, hope, and a deep understanding of what it meant to endure. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were survivors, strategists, and a force defined by endurance and intelligence rather than sheer strength. Their scars told the story, their victories proved the truth, and their spirit ensured that they would never again be dismissed. As he turned back to the Queen, Elias realized something important. Humanity's journey was far from over. Challenges would continue to come. Threats would arise, and enemies would attempt to test their endurance. But humans were ready. They had survived centuries of hardship, and nothing could break them. The Queen spoke again, her voice calm but resonant. Endurance is a dangerous power, Elias. You have proven that humans possess it in abundance. The galaxy will remember this lesson, and when it does, your people will not be prey. They will be respected, feared, and acknowledged. Elias bowed slightly. We will continue to endure, he said. We will continue to survive. And we will continue to show the galaxy that patience, courage, and resilience are forces stronger than any weapon. The alien queen nodded, a faint smile on her lips. Then the galaxy will answer, she said. Not because humans demanded it, but because the truth of your endurance cannot be denied. You have shown what it means to survive and what it means to endure. The galaxy will never forget it. Elias looked out at the stars one last time, feeling the weight of humanity's journey and the promise of its future. Humanity had survived the galaxy's cruelty, endured pain that would have crushed other species, and emerged stronger. They had proven that endurance, patience, and quiet strength were powers that could not be destroyed. And as the stars stretched endlessly before him, he knew that humanity's place in the galaxy was finally secure. They would no longer be dismissed, underestimated, or attacked without consequence. The scars they carried were no longer signs of weakness. They were proof of survival, endurance, and the dangerous power of a species that refused to break. The galaxy had learned, at last, that humans were not prey. They were survivors. They were enduring, and they were unstoppable.